Well, thank you very much. Let's pray. Most loving God, we pray for your corporate church as we try to demonstrate your love in the world. Forgive us and help us turn to you when we've been unkind or proud or selfish. We repent for the times we've delighted in evil, when we haven't protected others or trusted you. Help us to avoid these sins in the future. Forgive us for being slow to hope and quick to give up. We commit to doing better. In your kindness and mercy, help us as we work through ventures in community to help the disadvantaged, to grow ever closer to you, and to love you more deeply. May your unfailing love shine brightly through all your people. Amen.
Yeah. Thank you, Vic. This is a very exciting meeting today, and we're just glad to see everyone present. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy and let her introduce our presenters for today. And I will continue to try to make sure I let everybody in so that they can be a part of this meeting.
Thank you, Brenda.
Kathy.
Okay, and I'm gonna confirm this with Christine because she knows who's invited as well. I believe that Vanessa, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, from the Fairfax County Transportation Department is here, and Megan Van Dam, who's the branch chief of the planning division, will be joining us today. And were you able to get anyone else, Christine?
No, we were not.
Okay.
You know, originally, as we had talked about, this was kind of a overall high level EMBARK 101, and Vanessa is very adept at handling that presentation from a transportation perspective. Megan is our comprehensive plan expert and has been working on this for, I don't know, about 1,000 years. So has a lot of history. We were not able to get anybody from the housing team or from the One Fairfax team, you know, with a week's notice. But what I will say is whatever questions are outstanding, happy to get somebody to come back and, you know, get more into specifics if that's what the team would like.
And that's good to know because next month we're having our planning meeting for next year. So we're going to take a look at all the meetings we had. What do we feel got left off and revisit those? So I'm sure I'll be circling back with you at that point.
Great.
Yeah, so I guess we'll turn it over to Vanessa now for the presentation. Welcome, Vanessa.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, now we can't.
Oh, you can't.
Not now. No, you can look like a radio host. Yes.
Okay, so it does work. Okay. It's just weird because I guess I'm talking through here, but hearing you on my speakers. So I'm sorry. It throws me off. Okay, so let me start sharing.
Kathy, while Vanessa's pulling that up, could you just give really 30 seconds background of what VIC is for Vanessa and for Megan so they understand that coming in?
Sure, I will do my best for that. I'm a fairly new member, but we've been around for many, many years. And what we are is a fabulous partnership of nonprofits and faith-based communities along the Richmond Highway Corridor in both Mount Vernon and Lee District. And we work together to help the community, and that can have many faces, right? We can volunteer in schools, we can help with food pantries, we do hypothermia shelters. Different churches will support other churches when they're having, you know, activities like book drives or, you know, things like that, clothing drives. So it's just a great way for us to brainstorm and help build a better cohesive community in the Mount Vernon area. Did I leave anything out, everybody? Okay, I think we're good. Does that help you, Vanessa? Does that give you a better idea?
Absolutely. So thank you. So I think, like Christine said, I'm with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, and I am the BRT project manager for Richmond Highway. So my presentation is going to be on the overview of kind of what we're doing, what's coming up, and what's lately happened, so you guys are aware. And then specifically, you had some questions about connecting the neighborhood with the transportation improvements are going to be in kind of like on a ped bike side. And so we were talking about there's other ongoing efforts. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of those. So I've kind of stuck some slides on about that. And then I think the second part, Megan is going to give you more of the EMBARK 101, and that's more of the holistic view, right, of what's going on Richmond Highway. So again, I'm just here for the transportation side. So, and is this a good size for everyone to kind of look at?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, and
Okay.
I'll just say this to our people watching, if you have a little bar instead, if there's a little line, a square, 2 lines and a grid, if you click on just the second button, it'll make it smaller so you can see more of the screen. Then you'll just see Vanessa talking and you can see more of the screen. Okay, go ahead, Vanessa.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you for that. And I'm gonna, if I can find it, I'll turn off my video just because sometimes I get stuck. So, and I'm sorry, we're going to talk about the branding launch, talk to you about a turn lane analysis we did, and there's many more things, but apparently I didn't finish this part of the agenda, so I apologize. But we will go through all of this, and again, I'll tell you about upcoming meetings, and of course, open it up for some Q&A. So let's talk with about the branding launch. In February, we did a press release and gave the Richmond Highway BRT an identity, just like our connector system, right? The red and yellow buses you see. Well, we wanted to do something special for this a Route 1 transit system, and you can see after 3 years of hard work, after testing several brands, having focus groups, big online survey, we've landed on calling this the One. So meet the One here. These are our names, our colors, our logo. You can see here to the right of this graphic, this blue, right? We're going with blue. So this is in the top right. You can see the bus too. We think that this is what they will look like. This is what will actually be branded, what'll be on the highway. On Richmond Highway. You can see at the bottom here, that's our logo. So from now on, when we start to, we'll continue to promote this, pamphlets, wayfinding signs, anything, that'll be part of the One. So why the One? Well, it's short, it's simple, it's something easy that everyone can recall. It's, you're going down and up Route 1, so the community and everyone around can understand that. And it's unique because number one, you're number one for Richmond Highway, and frankly, it's going to be the first for the Fairfax County. So it's a very, a unique service. Like I said, this is the first one for the county. So it'll be fast, frequent, traffic freeway, right? We have the transit lanes traveling up and down the Richmond Highway Corridor. So we think this is the one way to do it. Quickly on our environmental document, this is one of the big milestones we needed to finish up before we could move on to anything else on the project, and that has since been completed. We finally got a signature from the Federal Transit Administration in January of 2022, and I've linked you here at the bottom. That document is on our website, so if anyone's curious as to what it said or what we found, all the information is online. Just quickly on project updates, we just talked about, we finished the environmental work. We have started or ongoing with the right-of-way process. That's a next big phase that we have to do before we can actually start moving, relocating utilities and being in construction. And I guess the big note on there is that we're still online to finish up and be in operation by 2030. Just quickly on the capital costs, where we are. We are at about in 2030 dollars, so future dollars, our approximations are about $795 million for the whole project. We have a big grant that we're applying for. You can see 49% of the cost we're hoping to get from the Federal Transit Administration through what they call a capital investment grant. And there's a couple of other sources of federal funding that we're looking at in combination with local funding. So that's the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, Smart Scale, which is a state grant, county funds, and other local matches. So really quickly, we did have a big meeting last week. We're calling it design updates in North Kings Highway. So this is really changes that we've done from our 30 to 60% design. So if you remember, we had a lot of meetings back, I guess it was kind of pre-pandemic when we were out in the corridor and got a lot of comments from the community, changes that they wanted to see, refinements to property impacts. A big one was the St. Louis Catholic Church. So we were able to kind of tie that in, limit those impacts. And that's one thing, we continue to do is just look for ways to kind of limit. So that presentation is online as we speak. And I've linked you here. And we also have the roll maps that you can see if anyone's interested to see what those changes. And here at the bottom, a big change actually that is kind of new to overall the project is this is up on the northern part of the corridor, specifically just to orient you, this intersection right here, that's Shields Avenue, which connects to North Kings. So you can see as part of the comprehensive plan work that Megan and her team worked on, we've taken in some of those recommendations, which specifically is to close off what we refer to as the bow tie here. This is Kings Crossing, so where the Walmart and that Chuck E. Cheese is, to close that intersection, add the Furman Lane extension, which you see to the right. And this is done because this is our northern last inline station. So this is the PennDOT station. So by closing this off, it just helps us with the BRT operations, helps it be more comfortable. If you cross this intersection, I'm just going to put it nicely, it's a mess. There's about 6 different lanes coming in at once, a lot of accidents. So by doing some of these recommendations now, again, it's part of the comprehensive plan, and it also helps us for BRT operations. Secondarily, we also just hosted a meeting last night. This was on the turn lane analysis work. So last year, we went to the board, I think around right before summer, so in the June timeframe, and looked for design endorsement. And we were told that go back and look at 13 specific intersections and see if you could do turn lane reductions just to kind of narrow that overall cross section. This work was done in coordination with the Virginia Department of Transportation. So we showed our recommendations to where or what locations we thought we could reduce some of those turn lanes. That information is online. The boards are up, and you can see here I've linked you to the survey. So actually, if you put your camera to the right here, that'll take you to our main page where you can actually take the survey and see the results of what our recommendations are.
But
so like I said,
it looks like maybe the slides are not progressing.
Okay. What do you guys?
We only see the first slide, and I can see Richmond Highway Bus Rapid Transit and part of the map. That's it.
Okay, I've turned off my camera. Let's see if that helps. Can you guys see that movement?
No, we see a PDF and we only see the first page.
Okay, wow.
Maybe you could close down your presentation, open that up again and put it into, there we go.
Does that help? Okay. Now it's moving around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want me to go, how far back should I go? Maybe pick it up at Brandy, and I won't go through my whole spiel, but just kind of stop and show you these were the buses. So I guess no one saw these before.
Correct. And that's a good picture. And we were all listening, so you can just,
Okay.
look at them. Yes. Okay.
So I'll stop and kind of just show you, here's important. So this is the website. Like we were talking about NEPA, it's online. So I'll just leave it there. Timeline. This, there's just the graphic showing the timeline. So again, we're going to be in construction or open for operation, in 2030. Capital cost, we talked about that, and it's $795, no graphics there. Maybe this is an important one, so I've linked you here, but again, all information is on the website. And because we just had these meetings, if you go to our main page, you're going to see April 28th and the following designs. And this is the picture, this is the followed me the explanation of what we were doing at the Shields Avenue intersection, the PennDOT area, closer to the north part of the corridor. Again, this orange is closing, and we just have an extra room. So we're gonna, at some point, there will be a plaza envisioned in the future. adding addition of Furman Lane here to the left because we've closed down the intersection here. And I was just saying how if you drive the corridor, and I'm sure most of you do, you know that it's, I'm just gonna say messy, a lot of turn lanes, a lot of, intersection kind of happening, coming all into place here. So by doing some of this, it helps us for BRT operations, and it also helps for safety, just because we're kind of limiting those conflict points, right? So here's where we had left off. So I was just showing you that that this is a QR code to the right. So if you turn on your camera on your iPhones and you point at it, it'll try to open a link, and that takes you to our main page, where you will again see the meetings that we just had last week, but also this week, talking about narrowing the cross section. And then a survey is right to the right of when you open that page, for you to be able to take it and give us your comments on the recommendations that we're making so far. And then, I guess just to close that off, and I should have put it on here, the survey is opened yesterday, and it'll be open through May 27th. An upcoming meeting that you might be interested in, and we're still working on. Does someone have a comment? Okay, a meeting we're working on, and I don't have a date just yet. It is for what we're calling community charm at the BRT stations. You can see I've entered a graphic to the right. That is what was ultimately chosen as going to be the station, right? The canopy, that's the top. You can't see it very well, but there is a windshield to protect people from the elements. And that's where we are going to put in what we're calling community charm. So although the 9 stations or 18 total platforms will be the same, right? Have the same canopy, be the same length, the windshield itself, they will all be different. We're calling it community charm because we understand that different communities or central business centers are different, and that they have their own character. So we want to bring that out. So you can see we're going to kind of summarize all these things that we've been working on, and over the next couple of months and through the summer, we'll be hosting several event meetings, and these will be in person on the corridor. Just talking to, we did this a couple of years ago where we grouped them at locations around the station locations, the future station locations, so that people wouldn't have to drive far, with, again, the intent of incorporating history or characteristics of those neighborhoods at each station location. So the question was asked of us of the transportation connections that we're doing and maybe some ongoing efforts. So the first one, I kind of wanted to stop here and show you this alignment again. It's not a good new graphic, but just, when we say that we're connecting or this is the alignment of the BRT station and the corridor, we have missing gaps. We've been on the Richmond Highway, missing gaps for pedestrian. Frankly, I don't have, other than south of Jeff Todd Way, I don't think there's any bicycle facilities on Richmond Highway. I mean, I know you can use the sidewalks to ride your bikes, but with our implementation of this project, we're going to give everybody their space. So we will have continuous a two-way cycle track on either side of the road for bicycles, and then a continuous sidewalk all going through. And this the sidewalk will be going through all the way from Huntington Metro, all the way down to Fort Belvoir. So all through the connections right through the main line of the BRT project. I guess a note here is we're doing this in coordination with VDOT. You probably know this too, that they have an ongoing active project that's known as the Richmond Highway Corridor Improvements Project. And that's about from Gum Springs or Sherwood Hall Lane to Jeff Todd Way here. So that's about 3 miles. So they take care of implementing the same cross section. But we're just in close coordination because, as you can see, we do have 2 BRT stations within their alignment that we want to make sure that they do the right way. they don't miss anything and that they're doing so that we can limit any reconstruction efforts they might have to happen when we come in and build the transit way. So that's one big thing to note. The second thing is well, what are we doing like at intersections, or more specifically, on the corridor? So we've kind of taken these 2, and this is a board actually that we're kind of showing at our public meeting. So let me see if I could zoom in a little bit so you can see a little more detail. for anyone who's interested in looking. So it is available online. But again, just to give an idea of what we imagine the spacing to look like. So let's start with this left-hand lane. So this is Memorial Street at Richmond Highway. You can see, in the center, we have the buses running. We are looking to implement street trees along the way. You can see we're adding high visibility crosswalks. So if, just so you know the difference, like the ones at the top, those are referred to as just the two simple bar style. But you can see at the bottom, when we do the high visibility, they stand out a lot more. And that's to get the driver attention, right, as pedestrians are crossing the street, so they know that and they see someone. So those are implemented across all 4 intersection points. We are also looking for wide pedestrian refuges as you're crossing along, in case someone, we are looking to implement this as what we call one stage. So you'll get the time to be able to cross all the way across, but we do have certain intersections where that's just not possible. So we have wider pedestrian refuge areas. We're also doing this by implementing what we call leading pedestrian interval stages where possible. So this holds traffic back, right? Giving the vehicles the red light still, but letting the green timer, giving the go ahead for pedestrians to get ahead as the vehicles, make their turns right. And then now let's take a look at Fortson Road and Boswell as another example. So these key elements are still through on both, but we kind of just wanted to show you a different example in a different area. At Fortson and Boswell, it's different because there's a station in the center, while, at a Memorial Street, there wasn't. So now you can see the canopy there. We are looking to implement continuous lighting. If you know the corridor today, that's only done at certain intersections and along just the intersection. So with our project, we're implementing lighting not only for the intersections, but throughout in between the intersections, so the whole corridor. We've talked about the bike lanes and the sidewalks on both sides of the street. And again, this graphic's not the best because I know it's a little far away, but you can kind of see the concrete where it's supposed to be the sidewalk. And then between the sidewalk and then the road is going to be the cycle track. We still have some of these local bus stops, right? Because, BRT runs just up and down Richmond Highway, but the local bus stops are more for those people wanting to go into communities. So off of Route 1, into the communities. And lastly, we wanted to highlight these intersection plazas that we've been working on, and we see these as shared spaces. So as you approach intersections, I guess you could see we're in a mixing bowl, a shared space where the pedestrians, cyclists, people trying to access the station, people just trying to get across the way. It's kind of like a slow down area so that everyone can share the space. So those are just some of the improvements that the specific project are working on. But as part of another effort that the county staff is working on, and our active transportation team, in fact, they're working on the active Fairfax transportation plan. And my co-workers have helped me with this. And I am not the expert by any means, but I'm going to put you, if anyone's interested, we can put you in contact with this team. But I just kind of wanted to give you a high level look of what that plan is looking at. So you can see here their priorities. And the big one, again, is to plan a connected, comfortable network. So this will look at sidewalks, bikeways, trails that serve all people and abilities. And why it's so big and important is this one is just not for Richmond Highway. This is like now you're looking at communities. Now you're looking, frankly, at the whole county of how to connect people, what we're missing. I know there was if you've been involved or know about this, there was a survey that they did that looked at, just ask people where are the missing links? What can we do to make this better? And so people got a chance to actually comment on it and put in what was missing. You need a sidewalk here, you need this here, you need a crosswalk here, etc. And so they're going to use this information and try to incorporate it into the plan. So it's going to be done, you can see, in 2 phases. They've kicked it off last summer. So some of these have been done. So the policy plan audit, existing conditions review, the benefits of the active transportation report. We've talked about how they've started the community outreach, right? Like they've had that big survey. So now they're in progress of looking at those maps, the feedback maps, and then looking at a Safe Streets for All program recommendations. And from my understanding is that it came from this bigger active transportation plan study, but it's kind of like an offshoot. They're going actually doing their rounds and going back to the board to try to kick that off. So I don't have more information about that specific program, but I'm going to link you to the site where all of this information is. And so they're ongoing to phase 2, which is, again, this facility selection toolkit. So when a developer comes in or just we have more funds, well, how do we look at getting those facilities in to the network, right? And this is all with the and Megan's, I think, part of that team. So this is all to get this into the comprehensive plan, so that that we can actually make this I guess more a proactive approach, right? And all these features and connections done. So you can see the timeline here. It is ongoing. The goal is to get this completed by summer of 2023, but they are going to have more opportunities for public involvement and comments in the next 18 to 24 months. So here is where you can look at what's been done to date. You can see they have these Safe Streets for All program recommendations. That was just completed, it looks like October of 2021. If they haven't already, they're taking the board action to the board. So they're either, I think it was this month, they're waiting to see what the board wants to do next. But here I've highlighted the website for you. So if you want more information specifically on that project, that you could always look at that. And like I said, I am not the expert, but I have left here my cohorts here, Nicole Winans, who is the project manager for the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan, and then the Safe Streets for All program that is at Lauren Delmar has that a project. So, and I'm sorry, her email got cut off, but I can always get that to you guys. So I'll just leave with giving you again for going back to the BRT project, that is our contact information. So whether you want to just ask questions or send us comments from the survey or any of the work that we're ongoing, we do have our own email address. That's dotbrt@fairfaxcounty.gov. And then our mail, you can always snail mail anything, and just as long as you do to the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, Richmond Highway BRT project, and then there at the bottom is our address. And again, this QR code here takes you to our main BRT website, which is the same as putting in fairfaxcounty.gov/transportation. So that is, I guess, a big overview and ongoing efforts on kind of other transportation efforts, specifically on how we're kind of connecting communities on Richmond Highway, and then how this project plays a role in filling in those gaps for the main line, at least. Did you guys want to open it up for questions now, or are we doing Megan's presentation and then opening it up for questions? I'm not sure what you guys want to do.
What do you think, Brenda? Just go ahead into the next presentation and then questions at the end?
Yes, I think we should go on to the next presentation.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa.
No problem.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Megan Van Dam. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'll just, I guess the mic is being handed to me in my call center headset here. So thank you very much, Vanessa. That's a great overview. I'm just going to make sure I can share my screen. Oh. Get to the front. Do y'all see?
Yes.
See my screen? I have lost you all, so please let me know if there's a question or a hand up or something like that. So yeah, thank you for having me again. My name is Megan Van Dam. I'm a branch chief within the Comprehensive Planning Division of the Department of Planning and Development. And myself and a number of other planners from different agencies work to develop with the community and the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, the Richmond Highway Corridor Comprehensive Plan, and update that about 4 years ago at this point, and get that adopted. So I'll cover a brief overview of what the comprehensive plan is and the role of the comprehensive plan. And I'm going to turn off my video as well because I think I'm having a delay. Can you all still hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can.
Okay,
Yes, we can hear you.
great. And then I'll go into some of the fundamentals of what the plan entails, and then talk a little bit about some of the development projects along the corridor and the status of those. And I think you all had some questions about One Fairfax and housing and lower income residents. So I've tried to orient the presentation toward that. Hopefully I can answer some of the questions that you may have, but I know we'll have some time to talk about that afterwards. Okay. And I've just advanced the slide. Before I begin, I want to make sure that, did everyone see that the slide advanced?
Yes, we do. It's very colorful.
Thank you. I can't take credit for that, but this is, this slide, it's just a little bit of a comprehensive planning 101 about what the comprehensive plan is and why we do it. I know I've worked with a number of you in the past, so forgive me for the repetitiveness, but just in case I included that. And so in general, the comprehensive plan, it's a guide for the long-term decision making and for the built and the natural environment. That includes policies about land use, about transportation, about environmental protection, about heritage resources, pretty much anything under the sun that relates to your quality of life and ensuring that there is a good quality of life for the community members within Fairfax County. The document itself, it is legally required by the state or the Commonwealth. So every jurisdiction must have one. And these are recommendations about the long-term growth and development within the county. It's not legally binding like the zoning ordinance would be, but it does influence those decisions about how our communities take shape. The original comprehensive plan dates back to the 1950s, and it certainly is a dynamic document that changes over time. And I think one of the key aspects of that, as we look at how land use changes happen, also relates to looking at infrastructure and the provision of public facilities and services that can support our growing communities and diverse communities. And one of which, of course, is what Vanessa was just talking about the bus rapid transit and looking at transportation improvements. So this is a map on the slide of the comprehensive plan recommendations in terms of the land use and transportation, and it looks a little fuzzy on my screen, so my apologies for that. But the different colors represent different types of land uses, and you can see this is the Richmond Highway Corridor. It's south of the city of Alexandria in white up at the top of the page, all the way down to Fort Belvoir, which is planned for institutional uses. The big blue blob down at the left bottom corner, and you can see Richmond Highway kind of cutting through right through the center of the image. So there's a lot going on Richmond Highway, and I'll touch upon that in just a moment. So when we were looking at the EMBARK Richmond Highway planning efforts, there were a few different pieces to it. There was the comprehensive plan amendment, so actually putting this very high-level plan in place about the long-range future for the corridor and the people along it. And then there was also looking at, we simultaneously began planning for and beginning the evaluation of the implementation of two of the main components within the plan, which are the Richmond Highway Corridor road improvements that VDOT is working on south of Ladson Lane and the Costco down to Fort Belvoir. And then there's also, as Vanessa said and described, the BRT project, and that extends from Huntington Metro Station down to Fort Belvoir. So what is the Richmond Highway Corridor Plan? So there's a little summary on this slide, but really it's a vision for a very healthy future for the community and looking at ways to improve the lifestyle and access for those who are living and working along the corridor. And it involves a significant transportation investment with improvements to pedestrians and walking and biking and taking public transit through the BRT system. And much of it in terms of the land use and potential look at the land uses and development along the corridor, it's geared towards transforming some of the older shopping centers into more mixed use communities, and with the goal of retaining much of the commercial that we know provides services and goods to the residents and you all that live along the corridor, and also providing more job opportunities and looking at different additional housing options along the corridor as well. And this is another map, and this one is a clearer map of the corridor area. You can see the Huntington station at the top of the page, and then the length of the corridor all the way down to Fort Belvoir. And so just to sort of put the vision into more specific terms, as we're looking at the length of the Richmond Highway, we're looking at trying to really sort of concentrate development along the length of the highway itself, and in that trying to kind of keep the communities whole that surround it. And when we're talking about changes, we're really talking about trying to limit some of those changes in or around the BRT stations where transit access is the highest. So you all are familiar with the corridor. Certainly there's a lot of very auto-oriented suburban style development along it. Much of the natural areas have been paved over or undergrounded. There's very few trees, very few natural areas along the corridor. So when one of the state agencies, the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, in 2015, they published a study and a set of recommendations that narrowed in the focus for what transportation improvements might help improve access along the corridor. And those recommendations spoke to the bus rapid transit, and then the long-term future of an extension of the yellow line from Huntington down to Beacon Groveton and High Bluff Valley. That really set in motion the work, the EMBARK study that developed this plan. So so that's where really sort of the more recent work originated from and resulted from. So here is a kind of a high level summary of some of those vision statements that I had previously mentioned, speaking to making sure that the plan is reflective of the community's desires and wants and needs along the corridor, and having community engagement and participation in any decision making. Looking at how development is concentrated around the transit stations, and trying to create more mixed use development and higher density development around the stations to support the BRT station, and to add additional riders in addition to those who are already living and working along the corridor, and have been using the REX service, which is one of the highest riderships in the county. Also looking at how the transportation system can incorporate pedestrians, bicyclists better, to give more options for those who may not want to, or cannot, or do not have an automobile. And then the last part of sort of these broader kind of big ideas for the plan relates back to trying to create a corridor that's reflective of the history and the environmental assets within and along the corridor, and making sure they're visible in different public spaces, in the design of whether it's buildings or whether it's parks or the transit, making sure that the pieces of what the corridor represents, and how, who lives on the corridor, what is the corridor like, what are the characteristics of the corridor, making sure that that's part of any future, and really shapes that future. And I think that it's sort of interesting following Vanessa, because when she was talking about the station design, that is clearly part of how an artifact of the work that we're doing can be shaped by the history of flight and the history of the airfields. And just to add to and elaborate on some of those thoughts, so as we look at the legacy of the corridor and the ecological resources, looking at ways to bring that into, as I said, public art and development, and or the urban design, so that not only can people see themselves in what's happening, but also that visitors can understand what does the corridor represent, and what are the values and history of the place. So these are some examples of, we have the wayfinding and the signage, but here are some examples elsewhere, Boston, New York, of how some of the history of these different places are brought forward in some public art. And then on the right-hand side of the page, these are examples of how either waterways that might have been paved over can be daylighted, or how even just natural areas can be incorporated into some of the transportation infrastructure that's being built in the streetscapes along the roadways. Another, I mentioned, making sure we're looking at healthy communities, and so part of the design of the place is really to bring in more places for residents to recreate and to build community, and to engage with each other socially, and that includes residents who live on the corridor now, as well as future residents who might be living along the corridor. So it's really a place, hopefully a place where people can come together and meet one another. And I'll get to it, but part of that is looking at those connections into the neighborhoods and creating new connections. And then we're also looking, of course, at I've mentioned a lot of different pieces about building community, and certainly that is part of the economic success of the corridor, and that's of course being brought through the lens of all voices along the corridor. So the policy speaks to really trying to strengthen that community through the people who live and work on the corridor now and in the future, making sure there's improved access to jobs, more jobs along the corridor, jobs training, education as well. And then also ensuring that there is that the housing types along the corridor are accessible and affordable to all incomes, all ages and abilities. So here are some getting sort of more into the built form of the areas along the corridor. And this again is really thinking about much of the area around the stations themselves. So part of the look at the built form and the building is looking at how that the building can relate to the street and to public spaces, to make sure that those public spaces are more comfortable for people to enjoy and to be in. Right now, I know all of you have walked along the corridor. I know I have. You're surrounded by cars zooming past you and parking lots, and there's just it's just seas of pavement. And the idea is that we're by bringing in the areas around the stations and opening them up for additional development, there could be some opportunities to create better public spaces, a nicer public realm, and creating parks and amenities along the corridor. So the plan speaks to trying to get this concentrated development, the tallest buildings right at the stations, and trying to create parks and plazas right at those stations. And then as the development, as the development meets some of the existing communities, that the buildings might taper down and have lesser building heights so that it's more compatible and more in line with what is out there right now. I touched upon this a little bit previously, but the main point of the plan is looking at trying to create more innovation and trying to bring in sort of sustainable practices, green infrastructure, smart technologies into the corridor and the development along it, so that really in the long term, the ecological health of the corridor can be improved, in addition to people who are living and working along it. So ultimately, this is all, we're as we look into our future, it's one that is more livable and more sustainable. And I mentioned creating more access from the communities around the corridor and along the corridor to the highway itself. This is an example of that in one of the station areas right at the Beacon Hill Shopping Center. You can see on the left-hand side, there is the existing shopping center. You all know this, the Target. This is something where you've got a sea of parking surrounded by, the large format retail stores. There's very little connection, and it's kind of walled off, basically, the communities that are behind it to the corridor. So as redevelopment takes shape, we're looking, the plan recommends breaking these larger block forms of the shopping centers into more walkable, more human scaled blocks, So you can see in the middle image how that might be done with new roadways that cut through the shopping center. And that would include better access to the stations. And then you'd have opportunities for development in between them. So you'd have the ground floor retail use, hopefully relocating within that development, and then you'd have buildings above it. And so in doing so, you can see with the image on the right, the idea is to create a public realm adjacent to the buildings where you can walk, you can bike, or drive your car. And then you also have opportunities for cafe seating and more activity along window shopping along the road. Part of the roadways as well, and the transportation system within the station areas within our community business centers is the idea. There are two ideas here. There are two sort of types of roads that we try to highlight to really, show off how the plan thinks about, a more people-centered approach to the corridor. Is this idea of a livability spine and an ecological spine, and that sounds kind of jargony, but it's just to explain it in sort of with less terminology. The livability spine is an idea for each of the transit, almost all of the transit stations have them, but it's a way to create kind of a main street that might have ground floor retail located along it, and it would have a linear park. So you would have this grand amenity stretching through the CBCs, and in a couple of them, you have them as sort of parallel streets to Richmond Highway. So if you're, if you are spending the day here and shopping or relaxing in one of the parks, you can be off the main street of Richmond Highway and enjoy a little more time, focusing on your friends or whoever you're there with, rather than really listening to the noise of the traffic. And then the ecological spine concept, this kind of relates back to the daylighting of some of the streams, and looking at ways to make some of the spaces that once were natural and beautiful, making them more accessible, and trying to regain some of the green that once was. So looking at putting back some of those stream courses, or in some form, some type of natural channel that could allow for some park space next to it, trail systems, things like that. And then the other central piece to the development along the corridor as well is looking at new opportunities for affordable housing. And we have a county goal about increasing housing production every year, and especially looking at those that may not be meeting the area median income. So the idea behind this is that as development happens, we would look at, and the county would seek that each development include some portion of the new units as affordable. And then you would, in return, the developer would have an increase in their development potential. So we have two ways of going about that. One is a requirement for certain types of housing to have to be required to provide affordable dwelling units within their development. And that would be offered and serve households that are making 70% of AMI. And then the other one is the Workforce Dwelling Unit Program, which was adopted in 2007, and then last year was recently updated. And that serves different incomes for condos. Condo development, it can be slightly higher, go up to 120% of the area median income. And then for rental development, it's really geared towards 80% of the area median income and below. But again, these are these are methods and tools that the county has in the toolbox to ensure that there are, in addition to just in general, having more housing opportunities along the corridor, but ensuring that those housing opportunities are also serving community members and residents who are not, whose households are below the area median income. So I'm not going to go through the concepts for each of the transit, I would say the transit station areas, and we call them community business centers in the plan. These are, as I said, the older commercial areas that are the ones that are tagged for and planned for the majority of the redevelopment. But I did want to highlight what their names were and where they are, because you have Pendaw on the northern end where Richmond Highway meets North Kings Highway and South Kings Highway, Beacon Hill, and then the Hybla Valley, which is where North Hill is being developed all the way down to Ladson Lane and the Costco, and then the Woodlawn area that I will highlight in a moment. And then just to say that the areas in between these areas of growth are primarily planned to plan for residential development. Many of the communities have already been constructed. These have because of their location in between the transit station, are planned for little to no change. Some of the commercial areas are planned for some new residential development, but it's really meant to be the order of magnitude is far less than what you would see at a transit station. So here's the Woodlawn Community Business Center, and you can see, you can see the BRT station in the red asterisks, and you can see the different shopping centers that exist today, with the Sacramento Center, the Woodlawn, Angleside. And the goal of this CBC, and actually I should say, and Doe Creek runs right through the North Fork of Doe Creek, runs right through the CBC as well, and then you have Doe Creek just to the west and the southwest. So as we look at the plan for the CBC in the future, the road, you can see this is an example of what you might see in the plan for a conceptual illustrative of what might be developed, and these are sort of representing some of the principles that I talked about, with carving up the shopping centers so that there are new road connections into and around into the neighborhoods to allow for more access to the highway. And then also at the BRT station, creating opportunities for new development and blocks for new development right at the station. And then that's what these blocks are. And you'd envision these with ground floor retail, and above that you might have office or hotel or new residential. And then as you'd get closer to the neighborhoods that surround this area, you have townhouses or 2-over-2s, triplexes, maybe some missing middle housing that would meet the neighborhood in a way that would be compatible and generally the same scale is the intent. And then we also have, you can see that there are these new fields created, new plazas at the station, where in Sacramento and Cooper, which now has the dual set of signals would be aligned, so you'd only have one, and you could have plazas and park spaces around the stations as well to make it a nice place for somebody to wait for the BRT. And then the North Fork of Doe Creek as well is looked at as a real opportunity to, in a very sort of thoughtful way, so as not to disturb the natural wildlife and the stream valley that's running through, we would look at ways to make this area more accessible and restore some of the areas that have been degraded and eroded over the course of time as development has put down more pavement and caused more disturbance to some of these streams. And here's a rendering of what that might look like at the BRT station and the BRT plaza. So you can see the nice wide sidewalks. There's a plaza at the corner, more street trees, shade for those who are walking along and maybe trying to get from their homes down to the BRT station. And here, another view of the roads and how it's identified. And again, this is just sort of images from the plan to help guide future development along the corridor. And I'll just switch, and I know I don't want to take too much of the time, but I did want to go through some of the current development activities along the corridor, since Vanessa touched on the transportation piece. I thought I'd touch on the land use here. So at the first BRT station at Huntington, there are three new developments that are planned. We also have the Huntington, actually I should say 4, because the Huntington Club was recently approved as well. The first development that y'all are probably familiar with is the Arden. So it's 126 units of affordable apartments, and then there's office space on the ground floor for Wesley Housing's offices, and it's serving residents at 40, I think it's 40 to 80% of AMI, and either I think it's about to open, or it may have just opened. You all might know. No. Okay. All right. Well, you all may know more than I do. Huntington Crossing. These are stacked townhouses right on Cameron Run at the north of the metro station. And this one, this is a really beautiful part of the plan for the Huntington area. Has a park along Cameron Run and a walkway that meets up with the levee, and ideally goes through and across Riverside out to Richmond Highway and into the city of Alexandria. And they're under development now. The Aventon is to the west, sorry, to the east of the parking deck at the metro station, and there's close to 400 units there. And you can see there's a new park space in the back with trails that connect into the neighborhoods and improved access to the metro station here. And there's an image of that. Within PennDOT, we'll have Alexandria Crossing, which is to the north of the PennDOT manufactured home community, and that has 460 some new units. It's a very large assemblage, and it has, here's a plan view of it along Richmond Highway, and you can see the manufactured homes to the south of it. It has multifamily units in the front, and then it has the townhouses in the rear of the property, tapering back down to Quander Road and connecting into Quander Road. Oops. South Alex, also about 400 units that also, and that has townhouses in the back, and the townhouses are now, of course, constructed, and South Alex is still under construction, but it also will have ground floor retail right at that PennDOT station, right at North Kings Highway. The Bellhaven across the street, it has about 375 units. And I should reiterate, these all, as we've worked through the review processes, all of these do have the workforce unit, and they've met the county policy for that. In Hybla Valley, moving south, I mentioned North Hill. This is an older picture. We need to get an updated one, but the townhouses are now, the models are open. And there's far more progression, as you all are aware, of the multifamily buildings than this picture shows. But this also has about 200, a little north of 200 affordable multifamily units, 60 independent living units, and then about 200 market rate townhouses. And there's the image. And of course, in the back is the 12-acre park. And then one of the more recent approvals is Mount Vernon Gateway. This is at Buckman Road. This will also, here's an image, also be for multifamily housing. And there'll be some more accessible, publicly accessible park space along Buckman as well. And they're working with VDOT right now to make sure that the streetscape along Richmond Highway is being built. The Lee District Center, it sounds like y'all have been there. I know I have. It's a beautiful facility. The Neighborhood and Community Services did a nice job with that. And they'll, as you're aware, there'll be the workforce training and development center, youth programs, and additional recreation for the community that lives around it. And then the original Mount Vernon High School as well is under review now for additional adaptive reuse. Of course, we're looking at education programs, programs for visual and performing arts, skills training and workforce training, business incubation within this, and other nonprofit uses within the former high school, which I don't know if any of you are involved and are located there now, but I know is being used for nonprofit entities now. So that was a lot, but hopefully it made sense to you. I'm here to answer questions as well. So thank you for your time and thank you for listening to me.
That was very good, guys. Thank you so much. I'm gonna do it so I can view all the participants. If you guys want to ask questions to either Vanessa or Megan, you can either raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask your question. I'm looking at the little raise hand. Okay, I don't see any. I do like how both of you guys have spoken to the fact that we are trying to, I don't want to say modernize, because it almost seems like we're going backward to before when we had all the concrete, but I really like the naturalness. And I dropped a couple things in the chat for our participants to read about. There's a new parklet coming at the Mount Vernon Plaza. There's the meeting on the charm of the stations that you guys referenced, I think is going to be really exciting, especially the Gum Springs legacy ecosystem stop, because that's a great way for us to help shape how our story is told when people come to the corridor, right? So thank you guys for talking about that. I do have one question from Mary. It looked like she might have dropped out. Can you guys both speak to some direct benefits to the low income residents that we have along the corridor? And I'm going to say that and include the comment I have from last night at the meeting. There was one woman in attendance, a resident of Harmony Place, and she only spoke in Spanish. And I was amazed by her bravery and her comments. And actually, Vanessa, you did a great job of answering her questions. But to that light, those residents are usually the ones who this happens to them and not with them without their input. How can we as VIC, our organization, help both you, Vanessa, and Megan include these communities? Because you can send out emails all day, but if they don't land in the right inboxes, it doesn't help them. And we have several organizations who work with housing, who work with the Hispanic community, who work with all of these people directly. So if there's some way you could send that information to us, we can get it to Christina to push out to our membership. And one of them might say, oh, that's a meeting. The people I work with would be interested in that, and communicate directly to those parties. So I just wanted to say that, but how are we including those communities in this process? That was a very long question.
I guess maybe I'll start because I know, Megan, your outreach, you're done with the plan. So it's a little different, right, between our two projects. So let me start. So it's been difficult. I'll say that, right? Pre-pandemic, we were out in the corridor a lot. And actually, I'm going to tout, we've been working, we haven't done this before. So we've been doing this new strategy with working with neighborhood and community services because they're the ones that have the contacts. So that's, I think, a different approach that we're all starting to do now. So in case you ever see her and probably know her, Katina Matthews has been our contact, and she has been so great to work with. We work with her where she tells us, hey, these events are coming up. Why don't you come or give me your information? She gets we always have everything translated for her. So at least it's in Spanish. She's also kind of given us like certain little inner communities that speak different languages. So we're, now that hopefully COVID is kind of ramping down and we're going to go back to in person, we're going to ramp that up. And you can see one of our big efforts is going to be for the summer, right? Community charm things. So I guess that was kind of during COVID. What we try to do is, everything was in Zoom, but what we did is we separated meetings. So instead of, it was easier because you heard yesterday we had live translation, but for Zoom, during the past 2 years, what we started doing is just doing every meeting in Spanish. So like on a Tuesday night, we do it in English, and then a Wednesday night, we do the whole thing in Spanish. I don't know that we got the results we were looking for with, having we had at least, 10 people at times, 4 people at times. So we all would have wanted to see more like the 30 to 40 at a minimum. But we did record those, and they're found online. So I think it's just, again, working with Katina, we've gone to what they call the neighborhood ambassadors, right? They have meetings along the corridor. So we've gone to them and said, here's information on the project. But I will say over last summer or the fall, I can't remember. Again, we're just joining forces because we think it's easier if like, for example, neighborhood and community services already has a event they're doing that they know people are going to be there. Why make people go to a different one? So we will go with them and just have a table in the corner and be able to talk to whoever wants to talk about. We did that at Audubon. We had the maps, we got some people interested. I will say it's always more interesting and people gravitate to you when you're able to give free things away. So whether that be pens, everyone loves something free. So now that we've branded the system, we are working on that so that we can attract. And now that, again, going back to the COVID thing, that's gone away, we are looking to see, can we, maybe have ice cream socials or snacks to engage. And so that's some of just the newer ways we're looking to attract and kind of work again with people who have those connections. So I guess our email list is also, and what we'll try to do is always have the Spanish version. One of the interesting things that the lady told me yesterday was that a lot of people, now that we've branded the system, don't realize that it's still Route 1, that it's still right in front of their neighborhoods. And so, which I thought I hadn't heard before. So we need to go back and talk and see, okay, well, what's grabbing their attention? What is the one title I need to use so that they know that it's in front, it's in their neighborhood and not someone else's neighborhood. So I will say she was very enlightening for us on that side.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have any questions? I see like those little
My hand is up, Kathy.
Oh, it is. Why do I not see it? Oh, I just see it. Yes, go ahead, Bill.
Okay, no, it's really local to my neighborhood up and down Kings Highway, which is the North Kings Highway intersection improvements. And I was looking at your, that X crossing there has been, it's just a bear for anybody who doesn't know this area. They get lost there. They can't figure out what to do. So I can see that that's an important improvement. What I couldn't see was what's the timeline? Because it appears that they're working on that now. They're doing some stuff where that's blocked off and you can't go from Kings Highway to Route 1 anymore. Do you know what the timeline is on this?
Well, yeah. So the improvement I showed you, they were actually tracking parallel paths. So the board in 2014 and in 2019, I guess I'm back up. In 2013, they started a study to see, well, what was needed there. And it was very limited. It was only from, I want to say, like Pogue Street to School Street and just along North Kings. So when BRT came on board and the board authorized that improvement to move forward, we realized, well, wait a minute, we're going to be in construction at the same time. Well, that doesn't make sense to have different contractors, et cetera. So what we did is, when that study closed in 2017, and frankly, it was pre-EMBARK, where EMBARK, Megan and the transportation team looked at those improvements. And so because BRT hadn't been chosen as the transportation alternative, we re-looked at it to make sure that we could make it work. And so we did modify it a bit, but what we did is we brought it into the fold as part of our project. So now it's not tracking separately. My engineers are the ones that are actually going to design it and build it. It's falling behind. I will tell you, it's a little bit behind the rest of our design, just because that decision was just made. We had to kind of reanalyze it, but we will catch up so that it'll all be constructed as part of the BRT project. So we're anticipating it, to be probably start from north of the corridor. So you'll see that those improvements start first. So that's tracking around 2026. Time frame. And so again, it'll be opened up and built as part of BRT, and will be, I guess, the new normal by 2030. Hopefully that helps.
If I can live to be 80 years old, I'll see it all.
I know, it's far.
Now, Bill, you say that, but I'm like, if our people 20 years ago had done this work now, we would be enjoying it, right? So it has to start somewhere.
That's right.
And I have, a 12-year-old, so she'll be enjoying it.
It was not a complaint. It was just an observation.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with
to hang
you.
around.
Yeah.
I want to shop
Please
at
do.
the Aldi,
Yeah.
an Aldi that's nearer, So
Yes, agreed. Anybody else? I actually have the participants up. Okay, Renee, go ahead.
I put the comment in the chat, but I think another thing that all of us can do is do the hard work of really knowing what's going on in terms of when the redevelopments come up, because as Megan pointed out, the comp plan is done and it's really a good comp plan, but it's not a requirement, and implementation is where things get done. So if we can get voices of residents and constituents to be lifted up during these public hearings about redevelopments and such, to really advocate for the things that matter to them, particularly as it already is in the plan, then I think that'll be stronger too. And following public hearings, as all of us know, is just so hard. No, residents, there's no reason a resident would know how to do that. I barely know how to do it. That's my job. So we can certainly all be doing that.
That's a good point. And I said that to someone this morning. Even if you don't know what the issues are, like last night at that meeting, there were a lot of people there, but if there had been 200, only like 10 people spoke, but the people presenting would be like, wow, 200 people care about this, as opposed to, a handful of people showing up and it's like, well, does anyone even know what we're doing or care? So even if we can just encourage residents to show up at the things that Vanessa and VDOT are planning, and maybe there's a free pen in it for them, right? But just to be physically present, even if you don't really understand what's going on, you're going to learn something in spite of yourself, right? But yeah, I agree. Following all that stuff's next to impossible. Agreed.
Offering basic needs can be really helpful too. I know we have had listening sessions before at Bethlehem Baptist Church with food, childcare is a real concern, transportation. So it's not just free pens, it's actually things that people need in order to make time to come to those meetings too.
Absolutely. Great point. Yes. Does anyone else have any questions for our?
Yeah, I know I'm just singing to the choir or talking to the choir, whatever the phrase is, but I mean, the comprehensive plan, I really appreciate your presentation and everything. And there's a lot of things that look really, really nice and are going to improve the community. And I think maybe my comment, my question is along the same lines as what we're just saying. Anytime development happens and things get improved, it really does put pressure to move the low-income community out. And I know there's voice given to keeping affordable housing, and there was some, 70% of the AMI. Well, that's still really high, 70% of the AMI. And, I'd like to see how, more like the Arden, 40% of the AMI, or other ways that we can get some subsidized housing in there. And so there's a lot of concerns. And I think to the point that was just made, we need to start finding ways to get people out to community meetings about this and express concerns and help the community understand the changes that are coming. And if they want to continue to be able to live here, they need to speak up. And we've got some work ahead of us to make that happen.
That's a great point. And I think we'll take that into our planning meeting for next month. And that could be one of our main focuses. How do we do that overall, right? With housing, with food, with shelter, security, schools, all of that. Then pick our topics. That's a great way to set up our next meeting. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead.
And I would just add, from a policies perspective, the affordable housing piece was a major issue with the EMBARK planning. We had the board chose to adopt the countywide policy, and that there was a follow-on motion to look at it, and there was a small group established. I think that also turned into this larger group. Maybe perhaps some of you all participated in the countywide effort to look at affordability and affordable housing. And there's also, there was a group especially tapped to look at the preservation of market rate affordable housing. And there's ongoing work for new policy about how to preserve market rate affordable housing for Richmond Highway and for the rest of the county. So if I could just put a plug in, I think the intent of that work is to have recommendations put forward to the board's housing committee next month, June 14th. And those committee meetings you can watch them live on Channel 16, they're public meetings. And ultimately that'll also translate. I think the goal is to try to get it done this year or this fall into new comprehensive planning recommendations and policy about the preservation of existing market rate housing when there are those pressures for development. So the board recognizes that as a priority. So thank you for that comment as well.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? We're coming up on 1 o'clock. Last chance to get your question in. No? Okay, well, thank you both for coming and joining. That was very, very informative and helpful. And I did like the BRT branding shirts you guys had last night, Vanessa. I might be sending you an email and asking for one of those. Those were amazing.
Okay, good.
Because I would be I could just walk up and down the corridor with my #1 shirt on. So that's great. And please do let us know when that charm meeting will come out, because I would love to engage, because how awesome would it be for us to hear from those communities, and then they can see something that they had input in every day when they're on the corridor, right? So that'll be a great way. And maybe our group can talk about that. But you said during the summer, those meetings are going to happen?
So we're going, yeah, just because I think there's still, even though I know it's summer, a lot of people travel, we're looking for, again, existing community events that we can just go to kind of participate. And we work again with NCS on, well, maybe they're hosting something else. And I guess the more exciting thing that we'll tell you is we're working with the high schools. So we'll bring the themes to them. We'll give them the background of whatever, like, let's just take Huntley Meadows as one of the themes and the pretty flowers or the history or whatever. Well, it'll be the high school art students who actually develop the graphics, which we just think that's amazing. They'll take more ownership because the system is for them, right? It's for the future, or for our future children. And so that's one way what we're looking. So we're not going to get any, they're professionals in their own right, but the local high school students are the ones who will be doing all the graphics.
Wow, that's great. Great. I love that thinking.
Could you also make sure you include the African-American churches in your presentations? Because for the African-American community, we don't necessarily feel like we are part of some of the other groups that you've mentioned. And I think it's important that you reach out to those organizations, those groups as well.
Okay. If you guys had a list, I mean, we know of some, like Bethlehem is always on our radar, and we have done presentations with them, but if you already had a list that, and we can again work with NCS, they might have something already, but since you guys are, it sounds like the group that had with the have list, I'm happy to take it, and then we can even add it to, you know, to just notify other groups, because we do have like HOAs and COA lists, but I think
Right.
that would be very helpful if you had something.
Great. Okay, Brenda,
Sure.
we'll work on that. Okay,
Sure.
that
Thank
sounds
you.
good. Okay, well, thank you. Brenda, do you have any final closing words?
No, I'm good.
Okay, great.
Thank you
Well,
for coming.
Yes, thanks, everyone. And don't forget to join us next month. We will be at the new Lee Community Center. We have meeting space reserved there. And we're going to be doing our planning for next year, all of the topics that you want included. And we got a lot today, so let's build on that. And I'll see you all next month. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.